Meditation is not an escape from life, nor a withdrawal into silence for its own sake. It is a gradual awakening, a conscious return to the deeper currents of awareness that flow beneath thought, emotion, and outward activity. True progress in meditation is not measured by visions, sensations, or dramatic experiences, but by subtle inner changes that quietly transform the way one lives, thinks, and feels. The soul does not announce its growth with noise, it reveals itself through calmness, clarity, and an expanding sense of inner harmony. One of the first true signs of progress is a growing ease and stillness. The mind, once restless and demanding, begins to rest naturally in quiet attention. Thoughts may still arise, but they no longer command obedience. There is a gentle detachment, a sense that awareness stands apart from mental movement, rather than being carried away by it. This inner poise is not forced. It comes as a natural result of regular practice, like sediment settling in clear water when it is left undisturbed. Another sign is a deepening joy that does not depend on outer circumstances. This joy is calm, steady, and self-sustaining. It may appear during meditation at first, as a subtle sweetness or inner lightness, but gradually it begins to accompany daily life. Challenges are still faced, responsibilities still fulfilled, yet beneath all activity there is a quiet contentment. This joy is not excitement, it is peace with a smile, born from contact with the inner source of being. Progress in meditation also expresses itself through increased self-control and kindness. The practitioner finds that old habits lose their grip, not through struggle, but through understanding. Anger, fear, and anxiety arise less frequently and pass more quickly. Compassion becomes spontaneous rather than practiced. One feels a natural goodwill toward others, even in difficult situations, because the heart has touched a deeper unity beyond personal preference and reaction. Another unmistakable benefit is heightened clarity of perception. Intuition becomes sharper, decisions more balanced, and understanding more comprehensive. Problems that once seemed overwhelming are approached with calm intelligence. This clarity does not come from analyzing more, but from listening more deeply. When the mind is still, insight arises naturally, as light reveals what was already present but unseen. Physical and emotional well-being also reflect inner progress. The breath becomes calmer, the body more relaxed, and energy more evenly distributed. Sleep improves, and fatigue lessens, because meditation teaches the nervous system how to rest deeply while remaining alert. Emotionally, there is less inner conflict and more resilience. One learns to face life without inner strain, anchored in a silent strength that does not waver. Ultimately, the truest sign of progress is a growing awareness of the inner presence that feels more real than thought, more constant than emotion. This presence is experienced as peace, light, and quiet assurance. It draws the meditator inward again and again, not through effort, but through love for the stillness itself. As this awareness deepens, meditation ceases to be something one does and becomes something one lives, moment by moment, breath by breath, in the silent joy of being. Inner calm does not arrive suddenly, nor does it announce itself with dramatic signs. It emerges quietly, almost unnoticed at first, like dawn light entering a darkened room before the sun is seen. In the beginning, the mind approaches stillness with resistance, carrying habits of restlessness formed over many years. Thoughts rush forward, demanding attention, replaying memories, planning futures, and creating imaginary concerns. Progress begins not when these thoughts disappear, but when the practitioner realizes that awareness can exist without following them. This realization is subtle, yet profound, because it changes the relationship between the observer and the mind. At first, moments of calm appear briefly, perhaps between two thoughts, or at the pause of a breath. These moments may last only seconds, but they carry a distinct quality of rest and clarity. In such pauses, one senses a natural ease, as though effort has momentarily dissolved. With continued practice, these intervals lengthen. The mind learns through experience rather than force, that silence is not emptiness but a form of nourishment. Just as the body relaxes when tension is released, the mind relaxes when it is no longer compelled to react to every inner movement. Natural stillness is different from suppression. When calm is forced, tension remains hidden beneath the surface, ready to reassert itself. True inner calm arises when attention is gently anchored, often in the breath or in quiet awareness itself. Thoughts may still come and go, but they lose urgency. They resemble clouds passing through a wide sky rather than storms dominating the horizon. This shift does not require effortful control, it grows from consistent, patient practice and a willingness to observe without judgment. As stillness deepens, the nervous system begins to respond. The breath becomes slower and more rhythmic, the body releases unconscious tension, and the heartbeat settles into a steady pattern. These physical changes support mental calm, creating a harmonious cycle in which body and mind reinforce each other. Over time, meditation teaches the entire system how to rest deeply while remaining alert. This alert restfulness is one of the clearest signs of genuine progress, because it indicates balance rather than withdrawal. Inner calm also transforms the quality of attention. Instead of being scattered among many thoughts, awareness becomes unified and centered. This does not mean dullness or sleepiness. On the contrary, perception becomes sharper. Sounds are heard more clearly, sensations are felt more precisely, and inner experience is observed with greater sensitivity. Stillness sharpens awareness because energy is no longer wasted in constant mental movement. In this state, one feels present rather than preoccupied, rooted rather than restless. As meditation continues over weeks and months, calmness begins to extend beyond formal practice. Situations that once provoked immediate reaction now allow a brief pause. In that pause, choice becomes possible. One may still respond firmly or decisively, but the response is no longer driven by agitation. This is an important sign of progress, because it shows that stillness is becoming integrated into daily life, rather than confined to moments of sitting with closed eyes. Natural stillness also brings emotional transparency. Feelings are experienced fully but do not overwhelm awareness. When sadness arises, it is felt without resistance, and therefore it passes without leaving heaviness. When joy arises, it is enjoyed without clinging, and therefore it remains pure. Calmness acts as a stabilizing background that allows emotions to flow freely without distorting perception. This emotional balance is not indifference, it is a deeper sensitivity grounded in inner steadiness. Another aspect of inner calm is the reduction of inner dialogue. The constant commentary that once accompanied every action begins to quiet down. One finds oneself acting, listening, and observing without needing to label or analyze each moment. This silence within activity is deeply refreshing. It conserves energy and brings a sense of simplicity to life. Tasks feel less burdensome because they are no longer accompanied by mental resistance or anticipation. Stillness also refines the sense of identity. When the mind is noisy, one tends to identify with thoughts and moods, believing them to be the self. As calm develops, it becomes clear that thoughts arise within awareness, but do not define it. This recognition creates inner space. One feels less personally threatened by change, criticism, or uncertainty, because the sense of self is no longer tied exclusively to mental patterns. This spaciousness is a quiet freedom that grows naturally from sustained stillness. There is also a moral dimension to inner calm. When the mind is still, conscience becomes clearer. One intuitively senses what is harmonious and what is not, without the need for complex reasoning. This clarity influences behavior gently, encouraging actions that support peace rather than conflict. Ethical living becomes less about rules and more about alignment with inner balance, because calmness itself feels disturbed by dishonesty, harshness, or greed. Over time, stillness reveals a deeper layer of awareness that feels stable and continuous. This awareness is not affected by passing thoughts or external circumstances. Contact with it brings a sense of safety and trust that does not depend on outcomes. One may still strive, work, and aspire, but there is less inner strain. Effort becomes cleaner, more focused, and less exhausting because it arises from centered awareness rather than restless desire. Inner calm also changes the experience of time. Moments feel fuller, less rushed. One is not constantly leaning into the future or replaying the past. Presence becomes more vivid, and even ordinary activities carry a quiet richness. This does not require withdrawing from responsibilities, it simply requires bringing still awareness into whatever is being done. In this way, meditation ceases to be limited to a particular posture or schedule, and becomes a way of inhabiting each moment with balance and clarity. As this natural stillness matures, it draws awareness inward again and again, not through discipline alone but through attraction. Silence begins to feel like home, a place of rest that one longs to return to. This longing is gentle and peaceful, not urgent. It reflects a growing familiarity with inner calm as a living reality rather than a temporary state, a reality that supports clarity, compassion, and quiet strength in every aspect of life. Quiet, lasting joy is not an emotion that rises and falls with circumstances. It is a state of inner contentment that grows from a deeper source. In the early stages of meditation, joy may appear briefly, often unexpectedly, like a gentle warmth spreading through the heart, or a subtle lightness within the mind. These moments are not created by effort or desire. They arise when the mind becomes sufficiently still to reflect the happiness that already exists beneath restless thought. Such joy is calm rather than exciting, soothing rather than stimulating, and its very softness distinguishes it from ordinary pleasure. Ordinary happiness depends upon external conditions. It requires success, approval, possession, or favorable events. When these conditions change, happiness fades, often leaving behind disappointment or longing. The joy born of meditation is different because it does not rely on outer support. It emerges from within, from contact with an inner fullness that remains untouched by success or failure. As meditation deepens, the practitioner begins to recognize this joy not as something gained, but as something remembered, a natural state obscured by constant mental activity. At first, this joy may be felt only during meditation. One sits in silence, attention gently withdrawn from the senses, and suddenly there is a feeling of quiet delight, without cause and without object. There is nothing to think about, nothing to achieve, and yet there is satisfaction. When the meditation ends, the joy may recede, but its impression lingers, leaving a subtle aftertaste of peace. This lingering quality is important, because it signals that the joy experienced is not imaginary or emotional, but rooted in a deeper level of awareness. With regular practice, this inner joy begins to stabilize. It no longer depends entirely on deep absorption or long periods of stillness. One may notice it arising during simple moments, while walking, breathing, or quietly observing the surroundings. Even in the midst of activity, there is a gentle happiness that remains present, like a soft background music beneath the sounds of daily life. This joy does not distract from responsibilities, rather, it brings ease and grace into action. As this joy becomes more familiar, it begins to influence how experiences are interpreted. Challenges are no longer viewed solely as obstacles, but as passing conditions that do not threaten inner well-being. Success is appreciated without creating attachment, and loss is faced without inner collapse. The presence of quiet joy acts as a stabilizing center, allowing one to remain balanced amid change. This balance is not emotional numbness, it is emotional freedom, the ability to feel fully without being consumed. Another sign of this lasting joy is a reduction in compulsive desire. When inner fulfillment increases, the urge to seek constant stimulation decreases naturally. One still enjoys beauty, comfort, and creativity, but there is less dependence on them for happiness. Pleasure is experienced without grasping, and therefore it does not lead to dissatisfaction. This shift brings simplicity into life, because fewer things are needed to feel content. Contentment arises from being rather than having. This inner joy also deepens compassion. When one feels quietly fulfilled, there is less tendency to compete, compare, or judge. The heart opens more easily to others, recognizing a shared longing for happiness beneath surface differences. Acts of kindness arise spontaneously, not from obligation, but from an overflow of inner abundance. One gives not to gain approval, but because giving itself feels natural and joyful. Emotionally, this joy brings resilience. When difficult emotions arise, they are met with greater gentleness. Sadness, fear, or frustration may still appear, but they do not dominate awareness. Beneath them, the quiet joy remains, steady and reassuring. This does not mean ignoring pain or denying emotion. It means holding experience within a wider field of awareness that is not shaken by temporary states. In this way, joy becomes a source of strength rather than escape. As meditation continues, joy refines perception. The mind becomes more sensitive to subtle beauty. Simple experiences, such as sunlight, silence, or a moment of stillness, carry a depth that was previously unnoticed. This sensitivity does not overwhelm, it enriches. Life feels more vivid, not because of heightened excitement, but because awareness is more present. Joy and presence support each other, each deepening the other. This lasting joy also influences motivation. Actions are no longer driven solely by fear, ambition, or the need for validation. One works, creates, and serves from a place of inner satisfaction. Effort becomes lighter, less burdened by tension. Even when striving toward goals, there is an underlying ease, because self-worth is no longer tied entirely to outcomes. One acts wholeheartedly while remaining inwardly free. As inner joy matures, it reveals itself as a quiet confidence. There is trust in life, not as blind optimism, but as a felt sense that something fundamentally supportive underlies existence. This trust allows one to relax mentally, reducing chronic worry and anticipation. The future is approached with openness rather than anxiety, and the present is lived more fully because attention is no longer divided by constant concern. In relationships, this joy brings greater harmony. When one is not seeking happiness from others, interactions become more authentic. Expectations lessen, listening deepens, and communication becomes more sincere. One can appreciate others as they are, without needing them to fulfill inner needs. This creates space for genuine connection, grounded in mutual respect rather than emotional dependency. Over time, the practitioner recognizes that this joy is not something separate from awareness itself. It is the natural quality of a mind, that is no longer fragmented by endless desire and resistance. The quieter the mind becomes, the more clearly this joy shines. It does not demand attention or expression, it simply is, steady and self-luminous. The desire to meditate deepens naturally, not out of discipline, but out of love for this inner happiness, that feels more real and reliable than any outer pleasure. As this joy grows more constant, it gently reshapes the entire experience of living. Life is no longer approached as a problem to be solved or a race to be won, but as a flow to be met with awareness and grace. Even in effort, there is rest. Even in silence, there is richness. Even in simplicity, there is fulfillment, quietly affirming itself from within, moment to moment growing self. Control does not arise from suppression or rigid discipline. It unfolds naturally as awareness deepens and understanding replaces impulse. In the early stages of inner practice, one may notice how frequently reactions occur without conscious choice. Words are spoken quickly, emotions flare suddenly, and habits repeat themselves even when they no longer serve well-being. Meditation brings these patterns into clearer view, not to create guilt, but to illuminate how the mind operates when left unattended. Awareness itself becomes the beginning of self-control, because what is clearly seen loses some of its power to dominate. As attention grows steadier, a subtle pause begins to appear between impulse and action. This pause may be brief at first, almost imperceptible, but within it lies freedom. In that moment, one recognizes that a reaction is arising, yet one is not compelled to follow it immediately. This recognition is not intellectual, it is experiential. The body may feel the surge of emotion, the mind may present familiar justifications, but awareness remains present, observing without being overwhelmed. From this presence, choice becomes possible. Self-control rooted in awareness is gentle rather than harsh. It does not rely on constant effort or inner struggle. Instead, it arises from understanding the consequences of actions and the transient nature of impulses. When anger is observed calmly, its heat loses intensity. When desire is seen clearly, its urgency diminishes. Over time, impulses that once felt irresistible begin to weaken, not because they are fought, but because they are understood. This understanding transforms control from an act of will into a state of inner clarity. As self-control deepens, compassion begins to expand naturally. Seeing one's own mental patterns with honesty and patience creates empathy for the struggles of others. One recognizes that others, too, act from habit, fear, and unexamined impulses. This recognition softens judgment. Instead of reacting with blame or irritation, one responds with understanding. Compassion becomes less sentimental and more grounded, rooted in shared human experience rather than abstract ideals. This compassion is first directed inward. One learns to meet personal shortcomings without harshness, mistakes are acknowledged without self-condemnation, and growth is approached with patience. This inner kindness is essential, because without it, self-control can become rigid and emotionally constricting. When compassion accompanies discipline, change feels supportive rather than punitive. One improves not out of fear of failure, but out of respect for inner harmony. As inner compassion stabilizes, it flows outward effortlessly. One listens more attentively, speaks more thoughtfully, and reacts less defensively. The need to prove oneself or dominate conversations diminishes. In its place arises a quiet respect for others' perspectives. Even when disagreement occurs, it is held within a broader sense of goodwill. This does not mean avoiding firmness or clarity. It means expressing them without hostility or inner agitation. Emotional balance develops alongside self-control and compassion. Emotions are no longer suppressed or indulged blindly. They are felt fully and understood clearly. Meditation creates space around emotion, allowing it to arise, express its message, and pass without leaving residue. This balanced relationship with emotion prevents extremes. Joy does not become manic, and sorrow does not become despair. Each feeling is experienced as a wave within a larger ocean of awareness. This balance is especially evident during challenging situations. When stress arises, the body may still respond, but the mind remains steadier. One notices tension without panic, sadness without hopelessness, and uncertainty without fear. Emotional balance does not eliminate difficulty, it changes how difficulty is met. Instead of being consumed by reaction, one remains present, allowing intelligence and intuition to guide response. As emotional balance grows, relationships are transformed. Old patterns of conflict lose their intensity. One becomes less reactive to criticism and less dependent on praise. Approval and disapproval are recognized as passing opinions rather than measures of self-worth. This inner stability brings freedom in interaction. One can be authentic without fear of rejection, and considerate without self-neglect. Another aspect of emotional balance is the ability to endure discomfort without avoidance. Meditation strengthens the capacity to remain present with unpleasant sensations, thoughts, or emotions. This endurance is not stoic resistance, it is relaxed acceptance. When discomfort is not resisted, it often changes or dissolves. This ability to stay present builds resilience, reducing the tendency to escape through distraction or unhealthy habits. Self-control also manifests in speech. Words become fewer but more meaningful. One speaks with greater awareness of timing, tone, and intention. The urge to speak impulsively lessens, replaced by a preference for clarity and kindness. Silence becomes comfortable rather than awkward, and listening becomes as valued as expression. This mindful communication nurtures trust and understanding in relationships. As compassion and balance mature, ethical behavior aligns naturally with inner peace. One does not need constant reminders of what is right or wrong. Actions that disturb inner calm are avoided instinctively, while actions that support harmony feel naturally satisfying. Integrity becomes an expression of inner balance rather than adherence to external rules. This alignment reduces inner conflict, because values are lived rather than debated internally. Emotional balance also affects how one relates to success and failure. Achievement is enjoyed without arrogance, and setbacks are faced without collapse. One learns to extract understanding from experience rather than identity. Success does not inflate the ego, and failure does not diminish self-respect. This evenness of mind supports sustained effort without burnout, because motivation is no longer tied exclusively to outcomes. Over time, the combined growth of self-control, compassion, and emotional balance creates a stable inner atmosphere. Life is met with openness rather than defensiveness. Challenges are approached with curiosity rather than fear. The mind feels less crowded, the heart less burdened. This inner stability supports deeper meditation, because fewer disturbances arise to pull attention outward. As this stability deepens, one recognizes that true strength is not forceful control, but relaxed presence. The most powerful form of self-mastery is the ability to remain centered amid change. Compassion becomes strength rather than vulnerability, and emotional balance becomes freedom rather than restraint. These qualities continue to refine themselves through daily experience, guiding behavior gently and consistently from within, shaping a life that reflects inner harmony through thought, feeling, and action. As awareness continues to deepen and express itself naturally in every situation encountered. Clear intuition does not appear as a sudden mystical ability. It develops quietly as the mind becomes less cluttered and more receptive. In the beginning, thought dominates perception. Opinions, memories, fears, and expectations color every experience, leaving little room for direct understanding. Meditation gradually reduces this inner noise, not by suppressing thought, but by placing awareness in a position of observation rather than constant involvement. As the mind settles, perception becomes cleaner, and understanding arises with less effort. Intuition is often mistaken for imagination or emotional impulse, yet its true nature is calm and neutral. It does not shout or demand attention. It presents itself as a simple knowing, free from urgency or personal bias. As meditation deepens, one begins to notice this quality more frequently. Decisions that once required prolonged analysis now feel clearer. One senses the appropriate course of action without inner conflict, not because information is lacking, but because insight integrates what the mind already knows. This clarity of intuition is closely connected to stillness. When the mind is restless, intuition is drowned out by competing thoughts. When the mind is quiet, intuition emerges naturally, like a reflection appearing on the surface of still water. This does not eliminate reasoning, it refines it. Logical thinking becomes more efficient, because it is guided by an inner sense of direction. Analysis serves insight rather than replacing it. As intuitive clarity grows, confusion diminishes. Situations that once seemed complex are seen more simply. One recognizes what is essential and what is secondary. This simplicity does not arise from oversimplification, but from depth of understanding. When awareness is centered, it perceives underlying patterns rather than surface details alone. This ability to see clearly brings confidence, not arrogance, because decisions are made from alignment rather than impulse. Calm understanding also changes how problems are approached. Instead of reacting immediately, one allows space for insight to emerge. In this space, tension decreases and perspective widens. Often, solutions present themselves without strain, sometimes in unexpected ways. This experience builds trust in inner intelligence. One learns that not all problems require forceful intervention. Some resolve themselves when met with patience and clarity. Intuitive clarity is especially evident in moments of uncertainty. When faced with choices, one feels less divided internally. The mind may still consider options, but there is an underlying sense of direction that prevents paralysis. This sense does not guarantee ease or comfort, but it provides coherence. One may choose a challenging path, yet feel inwardly settled because the choice aligns with deeper understanding. As calm understanding matures, fear loses much of its influence. Fear thrives on mental projection and imagined outcomes. When intuition guides awareness, attention remains closer to the present moment. One responds to what is actually happening rather than to what might happen. This presence reduces anxiety and allows more skillful action. Courage arises naturally from clarity, because uncertainty no longer feels overwhelming. This intuitive calm also enhances creativity. When the mind is not preoccupied with self-judgment or expectation, ideas flow more freely. Creativity becomes less about effort and more about receptivity. One listens inwardly, allowing insight to shape expression. Whether in problem-solving, artistic work, or daily tasks, this intuitive flow brings freshness and originality. In communication, intuitive clarity improves listening. One hears not only words but meaning. This deeper listening allows responses to be more appropriate and compassionate. Misunderstandings decrease because one is less reactive and more attentive. Communication becomes a form of shared understanding rather than a struggle for dominance or validation. Another aspect of intuitive clarity is discernment. One becomes more sensitive to what supports inner harmony and what disrupts it. This sensitivity guides choices in relationships, work, and lifestyle. It does not manifest as rigid rules, but as an inner sense of alignment. When something feels out of harmony, one notices it quickly and adjusts accordingly. This discernment protects inner calm and supports consistent growth. As meditation continues, intuition begins to operate beyond personal concerns. One may sense the broader implications of actions, recognizing how individual choices affect others and the environment. This expanded awareness encourages responsibility and care. Decisions are made with consideration for the whole rather than narrow self-interest. Because understanding has become more inclusive. Calm understanding also transforms the relationship with time. Urgency diminishes. One recognizes that clarity often unfolds gradually and cannot be forced. Patience becomes easier, because there is trust in the process of insight. Waiting no longer feels passive, it feels attentive. This patience prevents hasty decisions that arise from anxiety rather than understanding. In moments of silence, intuitive awareness may deepen into wordless knowing. There is no need to articulate or analyze, understanding is complete in itself. This form of knowing carries a sense of certainty without explanation. It guides action quietly, without seeking recognition. The more one trusts this inner guidance, the more naturally it integrates into daily life. As intuitive clarity becomes stable, the mind experiences less internal conflict. Doubt decreases because decisions are not made from competing desires. Even when outcomes are uncertain, the inner sense of alignment remains. This alignment brings peace, because one knows that action is rooted in understanding, rather than impulse or fear. Calm understanding also refines perception of others. One becomes less inclined to judge based on appearances or first impressions. Instead, there is an intuitive appreciation of deeper motivations and struggles. This understanding supports empathy without sentimentality. One can be firm without being harsh, and compassionate without being weak. Over time, intuition and calm understanding become continuous companions rather than occasional experiences. They inform action, speech, and thought without requiring constant attention. Life feels more coherent, less fragmented. Effort is directed more effectively, and energy is conserved. This state of clarity supports deeper meditation, because the mind is no longer burdened by unresolved confusion or inner conflict. As this clarity matures, one recognizes that intuition is not something acquired, but something uncovered. It has always been present beneath mental noise. Meditation simply removes obstacles to its expression. In this way, calm understanding becomes a natural function of awareness itself, guiding life from within moment by moment, through quiet insight and steady presence that continues to deepen as stillness and attention grow. More refined in everyday experience, deepening awareness of inner peace does not arrive as an extraordinary event. It unfolds gradually as familiarity with stillness grows. In the beginning, peace may be experienced as a temporary relief, a quiet contrast to the usual tension of thought and activity. During meditation, there may be moments when the mind rests without effort, and in those moments a gentle sense of safety and completeness is felt. This peace does not depend on solving problems or achieving goals, it simply exists when mental noise subsides. At first, this inner peace feels fragile. It seems easily disturbed by noise, emotion, or responsibility. Yet even in its early stages, it leaves an unmistakable impression. One recognizes a quality of being that feels more authentic than habitual restlessness. This recognition draws attention inward again and again, not out of discipline, but out of a natural attraction to the calmness experienced in silence. As practice continues, peace begins to deepen and stabilize. It is no longer limited to complete stillness or long meditation sessions. One may notice it present in small intervals throughout the day, between thoughts, during a pause in activity, or while observing the breath unconsciously. These brief contacts gradually build confidence that peace is not something to be created, but something already present beneath surface agitation. Inner peace has a grounding quality. It anchors awareness in the present moment, reducing the tendency to drift endlessly into memory or anticipation. When awareness is grounded, life feels more immediate and manageable. Problems are addressed as they arise, without the added burden of imagined outcomes. This grounded presence brings a sense of order to experience, even when circumstances are uncertain. As peace deepens, the sense of inner presence becomes clearer. One begins to feel that awareness itself is steady, even when thoughts and emotions change. This presence does not fluctuate with mood. It remains quietly aware, witnessing experience without being altered by it. Contact with this presence brings reassurance, a feeling of being held by something stable and enduring within. This inner presence carries a subtle strength. It does not resist experience, yet it is not overwhelmed by it. When difficulties arise, peace does not disappear. It simply accommodates discomfort without losing its center. This ability to remain present during challenge is a clear sign of deepening awareness. Peace is no longer avoidance, it is capacity. As awareness of inner presence grows, fear begins to loosen its grip. Fear thrives on identification with thought and imagined threat. When awareness rests more consistently in presence, fear is seen as a passing mental state rather than a reality. One may still feel caution or concern, but the underlying sense of being threatened diminishes. This creates space for courage that is calm rather than forceful. Inner peace also reshapes the experience of identity. Instead of defining oneself solely through roles, achievements, or opinions, one begins to sense a deeper continuity beneath changing circumstances. This continuity feels intimate and impersonal at the same time. It is deeply one's own, yet not confined to personality. This shift brings humility and freedom together, reducing both self-importance and self-doubt. As peace becomes more familiar, one notices a natural inclination toward simplicity. Excessive stimulation, unnecessary conflict, and constant distraction feel less appealing. This is not withdrawal from life, but a refinement of engagement. One chooses activities and relationships that support inner harmony, not out of moral obligation, but out of sensitivity to inner balance. Inner presence also influences how one listens. Listening becomes quieter and more complete. Instead of preparing responses or judgments, attention remains open and receptive. This quality of listening allows deeper connection, because others feel genuinely seen and heard. Communication becomes less reactive and more sincere, grounded in shared presence rather than mental exchange alone. In daily activity, inner peace expresses itself as ease. Actions are performed without excessive tension. One still applies effort, but effort is not strained. There is a sense of flow, as if actions arise naturally from awareness rather than being pushed by inner pressure. This ease conserves energy and brings a subtle joy into ordinary tasks. As awareness deepens further, peace reveals itself as a background that is always present, even when not consciously noticed. One may become busy, distracted, or emotionally engaged, yet upon pausing, peace is immediately accessible. This accessibility builds trust. One no longer fears losing peace permanently, because it is known to be inherent rather than conditional. Inner presence also brings discernment. When something disturbs peace, it is noticed quickly. This disturbance acts as a signal rather than a problem. One learns to adjust behavior, thought, or attitude in response. This ongoing feedback supports continuous refinement of awareness, guiding life gently from within. As peace matures, it becomes less personal. It is no longer experienced as my peace, but as a state of being that transcends individual concerns. This impersonal quality expands perspective. One feels connected to something universal, something shared. Compassion naturally arises from this connection, because separation feels less real. The sense of inner presence also changes the relationship with silence. Silence is no longer empty or uncomfortable. It feels full, alive, and supportive. One may begin to seek moments of silence throughout the day, not to escape noise, but to reconnect with this inner fullness. Silence becomes nourishing, like rest for the mind and heart. Over time, peace and presence become increasingly inseparable. Awareness rests in itself without effort. One may still engage fully with life, yet inwardly remain anchored. This anchoring brings stability that does not depend on routine or environment. Whether alone or among others, active or still, the sense of inner presence remains accessible. As this awareness continues to deepen, one recognizes that peace is not a state that comes and goes, but the natural condition revealed when attention is no longer fragmented. Presence is felt as the ground of experience itself, steady and luminous beneath all movement. The more attention rests here, the more life is experienced from this depth, shaping perception, action, and relationship from a center that feels whole, silent, and quietly alive, revealing itself continuously through stillness, attention, and the simple act of being aware in each unfolding moment.